today's debate will be dealing with solar power and grid capacity, but to set the scene, Wellberger Hemmetsberger, the CEO of SolarPower Europe, is going to deliver some findings that SolarPower Europe have been compiling in a report. Please welcome Wellberger onto the stage.
I'm particularly proud to present the study Mission Solar 2040 to you today, on a mission to support Europe to become the most secure, the cleanest, and the most prosperous continent in the world. And this is only possible if we are embarking on a flexibility revolution. Solar is booming across Europe. In 2008, we had 10 gigawatt installed. 10 years later, 100 gigawatt installed. And it only took us 4 more years in 2022 to have 200 gigawatt installed. You can see the 269 gigawatt that we have installed today. By 2030, we need to be at 750 gigawatt of solar. That is the goal that Europe has been setting to reach by 2030. Now, with flexibility and electrification, we can go even beyond. We could reach more than 1.2 terawatts, so more than 1,200 gigawatt of solar by 2030 already. And we could even double that by 2040. We need to set targets for renewables, and those targets need to also be complemented with targets on storage, targets on grids, and not just for 2030, but also for 2040. We will need some more help when it comes, for example, to hybridization, when it comes to co-locating solar and storage, solar storage and wind. We are asking European leaders to do that very quickly in the first 100 days of the new mandate. We also need to make sure that the national energy and climate plans are funded, so that there's funding which is not only coming from the European level, but also from the national level in order to support those plans. All of that needs to be taken up in a new European energy security strategy that is taking account of the changes that we need to see.
So, the operation of electricity grids is governed by EU market regulations. Where grid capacity is insufficient to accommodate electricity from wind turbines and solar panels, it can lead to a situation where you have to shut down solar panels or wind turbines, which is a wasteful and often expensive situation. I'd like to start by asking Francois where he sees the most urgent need for development or investment, and importantly, whether we're making optimal use of existing infrastructure.
My key message here would be to say efficiency first also applies to grid. As we saw in the previous presentation, we have huge investments coming in renewables, in flexibility, and in grids. And we want to do that in a way that is not too costly for our citizens and our companies. We need to improve our planning process to make sure we don't build any useless grid. So we need to improve the planning process in terms of assumptions and transparency, so that public authorities, when they face those risks, are able to assess them properly.
The EU set, as we've already heard, ambitious renewable targets, 42.5% at least by 2030. Is something not much less than doubling what we have at the moment. And in the electricity sector, that's going to be increasing the share of renewable electricity to something like 70% or approaching 70% by the end of this decade. Electric cars are becoming ever more present, but there's also the issue of electrifying houses, heating, switching to heat pumps, and as well as businesses, and ramping up hydrogen production. Can you give us the view from the power generation side on this idea of whether or not we're moving quickly enough to electrify?
I would say from the supply side, we are doing whatever we can, and I think we're performing well. And I think the European Commission has really very much realized the urgency of deploying grids, of enabling the market to work. And that's great. But what I'm missing from my point of sight is all the demand side. We cannot wait 5 years to go electric for the industry. We ask people to go electric. We ask them to pay the electricity bill. And for years now, governments have used the electricity bill to add up a lot of costs there that are not really electricity.
There is an incoming policy time bomb which might help persuade people to shift from heating with gas to electricity, but we'll come back to that later. The Council just last month, the end of last month, asked the Commission to press ahead with its own conclusions on the need to develop grids. So Sonia, as the Secretary General of the body representing transmission system operators in Europe, are we heading in the right direction, or so far these plans?
Are we doing enough? I think we're doing a lot. It'll be a question of history telling us whether we did enough, right? The figures presented today to get to 2030, well, that's just, tomorrow, and 2040 around the corner, and then 2050, well, we can dream that it's far away, but it's not. So it is about least regrets. In terms of the investment being made, it's important to make the investment right. We believe in flexibility across the full supply chain, both at the generation side or supply side, with solar, with wind. Of course, within the grid, because you can unlock flexibility already today. We know that, and we are looking at the innovations that can be already deployed, but also for the supply end or the demand end, whether we can have you, me, and all the industrials out there also contributing our bit to this decarbonization objective.
Let me turn to the Commission now. What can we realistically expect, would you say, from the next Commission? Or maybe from the last few months of the existing Commission, and then the next Commission, to address the issues that have been raised so far?
When we started 5 years ago, our reflection was how much and how fast we can go in replacing fossil fuel with clean technologies. What we have learned is that what matters is exactly the context. One thing is to plan an electricity system when you have 10% of renewables. One thing will be to plan it when you have 70 or 80% of electricity coming from renewables. And it's a completely different story. Our analysis by 2040 indicates that while the share of energy costs, energy system costs due to purchase of energy will be reduced significantly because we move to renewables, the share of system costs, the grids, the infrastructure, all additional costs will increase significantly. I've even noted down, to be precise today, from 2.7 to 4.9%. It's almost doubling. And this creates, once again, not only an issue of funding flexibility, but also the way we cover this cost. I will maybe not see a plan for electrification in the first 100 years, because I do think there is a moment where we need to settle things. We have a lot of reforms that just entered into force. The right moment to have this reflection is when we will need to set the 2040 target for decarbonization.
Can I ask when we might see the 2040 proposal?
I think we will have most likely most of the plans by the deadline or around the summer, so we will be able to produce our analysis by the end of the year. We are on track, and positive news on renewables, a bit less on energy efficiency, and I see that other parts of the plans are also taken seriously. The investment part, many of them are looking at CCUS, many of them are looking at hydrogen.
I think personally the plans are there for a very strong basis for how we plan the future. The importance of the energy transition is understood now in each member state, in each country, but it's also a question of have they considered how to bring in that national plan to fruition. And that part of it may not be as mature in every country as we see.
The problem is that they have been focusing for so long on renewables targets that the rest is much more fuzzy.
Do you think that the regulation around pricing is now fit for purpose? Is it sufficient to provide price signals for investment in renewables and grids, and, as you stressed, the importance of shielding consumers from volatile or high prices?
We need good prices so that everyone can adjust to that, and that can become an opportunity for everyone, because tomorrow if I have an electric vehicle and prices are free half of the day, I drive for free.
Householders are going to have a cost now added from 2027 if they stick to gas as a heating fuel. And this I think it's probably fair to say this is not many people, members of the public, are actually aware of this.
Certainly will be an inflection point. It may become very controversial. In our analysis, most of the burden will not be sustained by citizens or final consumers, but mainly by intermediaries and traders who will have to pay for the carbon tax. I don't think we will be looking at rocketing bills. I think also in general the gas prices and in the gas market after 26 will be bound to decrease further because there will be a more abundant supply of LNG over the market. And so I expect that every member state with the support of the EU funding will take appropriate measures.
Talking about national energy and climate plans, because there was a very upbeat discussion. Indeed, when it comes to solar, just looking through the solar lens, we have seen a great improvement in ambitions nationally when it comes to solar, but we're not there yet. So in order to get to these 750 gigawatt, the European Commission's plan, we are at somewhere 88% at the moment. What we do not see in most member states is indeed having plans when it comes to improving grids, when it comes to improving storage, flexibility more generally. So this is clearly missing in order to have that match between demand and supply. Thanks for that feedback, Stefano, that we might not see an electrification action plan in the first 100 days. I do hope it's not that much more time that it needs, and I do hope that we will see 2040 targets soon because we need to move fast.
If the grid flexibility requires such a revolution in digitization, are there any concerns about privacy or cybersecurity that may arise as a result of that?
Energy security and the resilience of it in terms of cyber is an important aspect.
The second one is cascading effect. If you lose one line quickly, you lose another one, and then you go to blackout. That is also going to be a challenge, and that's why there is this specific network code on cybersecurity.
Would it have been better to have built up the grid and flexibility and renewables in tandem?
In Ukraine, against energy generation, almost 80% of non-nuclear generation is off, up to 12 hours of rotating blackouts to maintain the supply in some areas. The only strategy that Ukraine can have to survive the winter is to decentralize production of electricity with small generators, solar panels everywhere in hospital, critical infrastructure, and we are going to try to help them as much as we can, because this can be a laboratory of how a decentralized system, remember, they can be target for attacks, terrorist attacks, military attacks.
We see some countries like the Netherlands where already the network is close to be a bottleneck, and we see there are signs for things to come.
We know the solutions. So we want to reach 70%, but we know what are the solutions. It's just a question of applying them and deploying them.
Okay, good to finish on a positive note. Let's get on with it. Thank you very much. A round of applause for the panel, please.
My main takeaway here is that we have quite a different part of, so we had the TSOs, we have the regulator, we have Acer, the European Commission, and I think all of them are conscious of what is our issue looking forward. So really, we really need to step up electrification and flexibility, and I think that was great. So we know the solutions. Let's see if it works out and we implement them looking forward.
The main takeaway is that we need to deploy renewables much faster, but it also needs to happen within an environment where we have more storage, more flexibility, and a higher electrification demand. The panelists agreed. I am very proud that we were able to contribute with our mission Solar 2040 study with facts and figures to the debate, and I'm very happy to continue the dialogue with all panelists on how we get there.